The Russian-Ukraine war is now into its third year. 2 years have gone in balancing of strategies. They have been poking each other, trying to move into each other's domains, and Russia has gone into Ukraine quite a bit, taking on Kiev and the other areas and the Donbas area where the bridge to Crimea is being blocked. So we like it or not, Russia presently is dominating the war because it has got its military prowess. While Ukraine did have some kind of a military prowess, but Zelensky, with his foolhardiness and rigidity, has devastated Ukraine's economy totally. And the US, they are the ones who are gaining the maximum. The NATO countries who are supplying Ukraine with aid and military hardware to keep the war going, so that their main aim is to drain out Russia's military power and also shatter its economy. But then Russia is made of a bigger and harder material. Initially, the economy did stagger a bit with sanctions and then the war with the machineries draining onto it. But then now Russia has got over it and the complete system has gone towards the war machinery and to support it. And the economy, to quite an extent, has stabilized. And also there are military hardwares from North Korea, China and Iran showing up on the war fields on maybe both the sides, and the war is now into Russia's favor. Ukraine has been flattened to the ground. And the biggest problem with Ukraine was that they could not hold on to their successes because they lacked manpower. Because in a battle, winning the area is not the only thing. You need an army or people to sit and occupy the space. So that is where the infantry comes into play. Only the hardware, the artillery, the air support doesn't play anything. You have to hold on to ground that you capture. And Russia has been able to do it quite well. Initially, they bulldozed it with their armored and with the private armies and the conscripted force which was there. But then they have now held on and they are holding on to their defenses and are now no more aggressive but playing a defensive battle to keep elongating the battle as long as they want and to drain out Ukraine completely. So over these 2 years, both these countries have worked relentlessly or fought relentlessly, and some kind of strategies have been built out over the 2 years, which I will focus upon so that we now know where the exact battle stands. So first I will dwell a little bit on the Russian strategy and then the strategy of Ukraine's foolhardiness of being conned by the NATO countries. Here I will like to say, like Karl von Clausewitz said, that so long as I have not overthrown my opponent, I am bound to fear that he may overthrow me. Thus, I am not in control. My enemy dictates me so that much I also want to dictate him. So the Russo-Ukrainian War has reiterated Clausewitz's caution, as neither army is able to outrightly defeat the other. Now Russia and Ukraine are locked in a long war of attrition which is fueling the stalemate to which Zelensky refers and Watling rejects. The writing between the lines thus suggests that when confronted with war, a state must unleash a military force that is capable of both defeating its adversary's army and simultaneously accomplishing its supplemental conditions of ends trade. So, like I said, the Russian strategy basically can be called upon that it wants to fracture the Ukrainian state politically, territorially, and culturally to maintain sufficient territorial acquisitions to support a range of acceptable political military outcomes, maintain strategic material overmatch, exhaust Ukraine's ability to continue fighting both materially and as regards Ukrainian support from international community, normalize the conflict abnormalities and undercut and erode Ukraine's ability to conduct offensive operations to reclaim annexed territory. So now when viewing all these ends collectively, it is clear that denationalization of the Ukrainian state is Russia's strategy, and in this conflict, like we know that Lemkin has defined that denationalization as a state's deliberate and systematic process of eroding or destroying other states' national character, break down the culture, economy, and the ethics of the nation, so that the nation is in shambles. So, the Kremlin's objectives in 2022 included unseating Zelensky, ending Ukraine's self-rule and replacing it with a Russian partisan political leadership and annexing a significant portion of Ukraine's territory. To that end, Putin spoke at the time of denazifying and demilitarizing Ukraine while also forcing Kyiv to remain politically and militarily neutral within the international community's network of political and military alliances. So Putin basically wanted to control Ukraine with a puppet government so that Ukraine would be playing into Russia's hands. But then Zelensky, like the comedian that he was, came into power and got into this fiasco thinking that NATO would be supporting him, but he has devastated his nation. So over these 2 years, both the nations have been firing at each other, and 2024 will be a pivotal year for Ukraine if the United States elects a Ukraine-friendly government. Then this war will stretch on, and if the other happens, Ukraine will be flopped down and Russia will annex much of its territory, and it will have to play into Russian hands. So Russia has already weathered much of this risk associated with invading Ukraine. Like I said, economic sanctions were there which hit hard on the Russian industry, and over a period of time the economy has absorbed those early hardships and hiccups and found ways to offset many of those challenges, including through Chinese, North Korean and Iranian support. Like I said, they have also fended to help Russia as the West is helping out Ukraine. So further, the West's gradual escalation of weapon support to Ukraine allowed Russia to develop an equally gradual learning curve to those weapons and in most cases nullify any game changing. And here, one advantage what has happened with Russia is now they have studied the Western war machinery and have understood the thing and have started counteracting it, because the military hardware of the West and Russia have got differences. So now Russia knows and has learned about this complete machinery and has molded their own war machinery to counter the hardware of the West, through which Ukraine is fighting the war. So the primary risks that the Russo-Ukrainian War poses to Russia are today the United States and NATO might intervene with their land forces on behalf of Ukraine. Political upheaval might occur as a result of domestic unrest, and the risk of the US and the NATO intervention with low force is though very low and will remain unlikely, most probably, because of the fear that Russian escalation with tactical or strategic nuclear weapons can turn the war into a different ballgame altogether. So although the likelihood of nuclear strikes by Russia on Ukraine is quite low, but then it cannot be ruled out. The second risk is that of domestic unrest creating political instability. Putin and his coterie of supporters continue to the use of old Russian methods to outset such problems. Arrests, assassinations, disappearances, and suppression are the primary methods. Prigozhin of the Wagner Group was assassinated in a very silent manner in August 23 when they tried to revolt. Alexei Navalny was also neutralized when he tried to become an opposition, and then the list is long, and Putin is very crude with his enemies, and he is ruthless. He doesn't stop at using his secret services and KGB. So opposing him is quite difficult. So overall, Russia's strategy of exhaustion can be broken into 5 lines of effort: incrementally increase territorial gains to support negotiation later down the line, fortify territorial gains to prevent Ukrainian efforts to retake their land, destroy Ukraine's offensive capability to prevent future attempts to regain annexed territory, temporarily elongate the conflict to outlast US and the Western military support, and also temporarily, especially elongate the conflict to exceed Ukraine's manpower reserves, so that Ukraine is totally milked out and falls down exhausted. And that is what Russia is now achieving. And in turn, Ukraine now presently has lost out on all its strategies and is trying to defend its land and try to annex back whatever Russia has overrun. And that too, it is doing it with Western support, because Zelensky is jumping from country to country with a begging bowl. So Ukraine's focus remains to liberate its territory from Russian occupation and restore its 1991 borders with Russia, which includes restoring its sovereignty over Donbas and Crimea. Beyond that, Ukraine continues to work to strengthen its bond with the West, because that is his only lifeline, from security assistant partnerships to working on joining the European Union. Zelensky and his government continue to press the diplomatic channels to maintain and gain political, military, and economic support from international community. And also, they are trying to play the sympathy card that they are being bullied around by Russia. So Kyiv's effort to join the EU and continue to maintain support for the international community are arguably much more realistic than its objective to remain or remove Russian military forces or the proxies that have taken over the territory. So Ukraine now is basically, instead of just attacking to retake one small portion of its territory, must at least work towards reclaiming nearly 20% of its territory so that it can try to come back to some kind of an original situation. And as per Putin, about 670,000 soldiers of Russia are committed to the conflict, and there has been a 200% increase from Moscow's initial strength of 190,000 strong invasion force. So that is quite a bit of enhancement, and Ukraine is getting trained out in manpower reserves, because even if it has equipment, holding of ground, pushing back the enemy is not being done because they are trained out on manpower. Here, I would like to highlight certain things: that long-range precision strikes with drones of all types and excellent targeting information have been done, intelligence is being created, and the advance of the defensive posture of the competing land forces are not supplementing. Technology is there, but then manpower is missing out. So here, the greatest risk to Ukraine's strategy for winning the war against Russia is the loss of US political, financial and military support. The loss of the support from the other European partners will also follow out if US backs out. And one of Kyiv's biggest strategic risks is exhausting or diffusing its military force, which I have been harping continuously, because Ukraine is going down on its resources, and this is not going to help Zelensky and his government intending to liberate the Ukrainian territory from Russia. So here, the most basic finding is that Ukraine has culminated and is not capable of offensive operations to the scale that is required to retake Donbass, on which Russia has got full control, and the land bridge to Crimea is under Russian control. Then precision strike and air power are also not being done because the training of the forces is not to that level, because the manpower has been overhauled. The casualties are quite a bit on both the sides. The Russian casualties are known to quite an extent, but the Ukrainians have not diverted their casualties, but then it is at par, like we all know. And Ukraine is on a drain for manpower resources, which I have been telling time and again, which is going to be the biggest factor and loss for Ukraine after the lack of support of US over a period of time. Like presently, the US has frozen its support to Ukraine, and Ukraine is finding it difficult to sustain the war. So overall, in a nutshell, we can say the Russian-Ukraine war is currently in a status quo. The stalemate is the result of competing strategies, one of which is focused on the retention of annexed territory and the other on the vanquishment of a hostile force from its territory. So presently, like I told you, it is a kind of stalemate, and here the war is basically not between Russia and Ukraine. It is basically Russia and the NATO forces with US in lead. And though they all tried to quell down Russia with sanctions, but then Russia has come out of that phase with the support of the weapons from Iran, China and North Korea. they will be able to tide through. Manpower is not a problem for Russia, and now they have taken on a defensive posture and are holding on to the land. The main area of Donbass, which was important, is held. Ukraine doesn't have much of resources to fight, either push back Russia or hold on to retaken territory. So here the conclusion is Russia is on top of Ukraine and Ukraine is down, and it cannot sustain it without the US or the European support. So let us see what happens in future, and with the US elections in November, it will be a big turning point for this war. So keep watching this channel for such more related videos, and also important, which can be of value to you. And if you want to reach the pinnacle of success, call me at the number given below so that I can coach you on life skills and you can fly like an eagle. Jai Hind.